Welcome to In the Know. This video, we're going to cover the Pelicans' salary cap situation, especially regarding the tax, and why I think they might actually pay the tax, or they might be preparing to this year. All right, Mason. Just to recap, our friendly listeners, the Pelicans are currently $2.9 million over the tax line. They have 14 players on their roster. You need 14 on your roster at minimum, otherwise the NBA penalizes you. 15 is the max amount you can have. They currently have Kyra Lewis's contract, $5.7 million, which they can dump. They can usher into a trade exception. Cap space has pretty much vanished from the market, so you can't just send him to someone's cap space, but you could send him to someone's trade exception. The Washington Wizards have one. A few other teams have one, but the Wizards are the one that stick out to me the most. And remove him from your books entirely, or you can kind of do a trade for a much smaller contract. We've discussed that. So they have a few pathways to get under the tax right now. I have a few questions for you. One, I don't think there's any real urgency for them to do these type of deals right this minute. They don't have to pay the tax today. They have until the end of the year. Actually, they can hold on to Kyra literally until June 30th. I have to check if they've changed the wording to the last day of regular season or not. But it used to be just literally end of the calendar year. And, if the Wizards still have their trade exception at that point, they could send Kyra into that exception at that point, and duck under the tax. But I don't think there's any real urgency. Do you think there should be? And do you think this is the one question I wanted to ask you? And I think you're going to like this question is, do you think David Griffin is going to go into the season with this roster intact, $2.9 million over the tax, not make a move? One, I think it's good to project that to your competitors. You're like, we're not worried. But two, as a kind of a way to ownership and be like, oh yeah, we'll get under it, and then they're going to find themselves playing really, really well, and he's going to go to ownership and be like, look, we're already in the tax. Sorry, like we're just going to make this deal for this next guy and stay in the tax. Like it's just what we're going to do. Do you think he's trying to pull a fast one on ownership here?
I support it if that's what he's doing. I do think if there is a mandate to get under the tax line, I do think there should be a little urgency because they don't exactly have a ton of second round picks to trade. I guess that's kind of that almost helps them in negotiation, right? Like if you're trying to get under the tax, you've got Kyra, you've got cash you can send, but you only have like one or two future second round picks. You're not going to send a first round pick to dump Kyra, and I think no team's going to be pushed that hard in negotiations to do that. So like maybe that helps you negotiate, and the fact you don't have a ton of picks that you can just attach to him. But I do think, like generally speaking, the closer you get to the deadline, the more urgency there is for a team that was one of two in the NBA to have never paid the tax, and so they could get backed into a corner a little bit on this one. But that said, I think I don't know how big that risk is, and I love I love the theory that you have about this. And so if they are playing really well, why not even just like try to make that case? Like why not? Yeah, sure, let's go for it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Look, I think that there is a world where this team pays a tax this year, and I don't think he's necessarily trying to pull a fast one, but if you want to maximize your window for trades in terms of matching salaries and all of that, keeping Kyra's $5.7 million on the books lends you greater pathways to make trades that fit you or whatever you're trying to do than not having his $5.7 million on the book, especially if you feel confident that there is a deal, there is something later that you can work out. I think that is what they end up doing. I do think the value of keeping that contract around in order to like maybe that you make a trade where it's JV and Kyra, and you bring back some slightly more matching salary, is one that ends up being beneficial. I think that the benefits of that might outweigh the risk of being left holding the bag on Kyra and not having a place to dump him.
Well, so see that's the big challenge, right, is like there should be two pathways here. One is you make a bigger trade at the deadline. The other is you dump Kyra at the deadline to get out of the tax. Like being a tax team because you kept Kyra and you're like $3 million over the line, that I don't think he's going to make any friends with ownership if that happens. So you've got to have some plan to dump him if nothing materializes with the deadline. I feel like that is probably the threshold for ownership, even if they're gonna if Griff is gonna make this play.
To be fair, Mason, Kyra's not the only way they can get under the tax, right? Larry Nance is a useful player. I've said it before, but if they trade Larry Nance straight up for a guy like Zach Collins, that gets them under the tax, right? JV is a useful player. If they trade JV for a guy like Kelly Olynyk straight up, that gets them under the tax, right? So, or a guy like Gafford. There are ways for them to get under the tax that don't involve Kyra. They're only $2.9 million over it. There's other contracts that they can play around with, and maybe they believe at the deadline they'll have those options. Even if it's not just, hey, we're pushing Kyra into somebody's trade exception.
Yeah. What about let's see, does CJ for Zach LaVine get him under? No,
Zach LaVine's making a ton of money.
He's higher. Yeah, never mind. So I remember there was about that difference, but I couldn't remember who was making more, but it's LaVine. So it's probably one of the guys you mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. There's ways under. I think there's benefits to just kind of projecting strength here and just being like, look, we're not going to get extorted for dumping a lottery pick. And look, I think the cost to dump him.
I'm not buying that. I'm not buying this from a team that's never paid the tax before.
I agree with you, but I do think like the cost to dump Kyra isn't going to meaningfully change. Whereas maybe there's a 1% or a 0.5% chance that Kyra actually turns into a good player this year, and you get compensated to move Kyra. But look, again, there's multiple pathways out of the tax. I don't think it's a done deal that JV finishes the season on the Pelicans or even starts the season on the Pelicans. Frankly, I don't think it's a done deal that Kyra is the only way out. So I think they have options here. Look, my gut says they're going to pull off a trade for like a Jared Allen or something in the middle of the year. Maybe it's Capella, but I think they're going to work something out, and I think they're going to be happy they have the matching salary. Although, look, the matching salary rules have expanded. Like there doesn't have to be a $5 million different when it comes to salary matching on those like mid-tier contracts. It's now expanded to $7.5 million, so that allows for more flexible salary matching for some players. It's now 175% rule for like the smaller contracts. So like there's just like an expanded way to match salaries now, but again, that expanded way also lends you a greater amount to match later if you keep Kyra's contract. Like you can trade for like a $27 million guy by keeping or $28 million guy, but by sending out JV and Kyra and not really have an issue,
Yeah. Look, I love it. Like bring on the chaos, right? It's just like, it's something different, right? I know it's running it back to an even higher degree if you keep Kyra, but it's still like, it makes you, it creates the inevitability that something else is going to happen here.
The guy, like one guy that they've like loosely been linked to is Pascal Siakam, and he's expiring, and he's like, I think a shade over 30 million. And how are you going to get to that salary without Kyra if you just have dumped Kyra, so it's like you can do, I got to check it. Like, you know what? Let me check it right now. But I think you could do Kyra, like JV and Najee, and then like that gets you there. Obviously, like that's not going to be the deal. I'm sure it had to involve like Dyson or whatever, but you have way more options if you keep Kyra at the deadline, and especially if you feel like, hey, we can get under because this trade for JV for Gafford is always going to be there because Gafford's under contract for 4 years, dude. 4 years.
Siakam's an interesting one that we can talk about another time. But like that, the Raptors have they owe their pick top 7 protected to San Antonio, I believe, from the Pirtle trade, and so their season's going to go one of 2 very different ways. And so, I think he could certainly be out there for the taking if depending on how their season goes.
Yeah, so my prediction is the Pelicans will pay the tax this year. I do think they will enter the
Wow.
season with their roster largely unchanged. The additions being Cody Zeller and Jordan Hawkins, and of course EJ Liddell on a full deal. Um, I think unless of course between now and September there's a trade that happens that the Pelicans love, but I think that trade happens closer to the deadline or at the deadline.
All right.
That's my prediction.
Let's see. That'd be great.
All right. Thanks for listening, Pelicans fans, and we'll see you around sometime soon. And hope you enjoyed this.